Gonna about those things again for tuning into yet another video. Infamous coming at you live from the West Coast yet again, San Jose, California. So here we have the bracket that I modified. If you guys seen the unboxing video on the TCMT FXLRST Fairing, you guys know that this is the fairing for the 2022, 2023, and 2024 Lowrider ST. Alright, so you can see that we modified it. I chopped it up, of course, and I welded a few steel, what do you call these? I got it on Home Depot for like 14 bucks. So, like I said, I didn't record it because I'm not a fabricator. I really don't know what I was doing at the time. I know how to take measurements and stuff like that, but you guys can see my welds. Pretty terrible, okay? So I'm not a fabricator. And I think it came out pretty decent, alright? So I'm just going to tell you guys what it is, of course, and how did I come, or how did I came to this overall design you guys can see. Alright, so like I said, I'm not a fabricator, nothing like that, okay? Far from it. I don't have the tools, I don't have the space to be doing this stuff, but somehow I managed to get it pretty decent, alright? It's not a good job at all, but it's a lot better than, you know, paying the full price. So anyways, you guys probably know Advent Black. They have a complete bracket, fairing, stuff like that. Fantastic. If you don't want to do any of this fabrication, if you don't have the tools or the skills or anything like that, then that would be your best bet. I believe it's somewhere around $1,400. I got this whole kit for about 600 bucks with tax and shipping. So that's why I was a little bit more easy, or I guess I wasn't hesitant on chopping this thing up. So yes, if you guys seen the unboxing video, you have the bracket that comes out here. I had to cut that off because of the fork lock on the Sportsters. The fork lock on the Sportsters sits up high. Alright, so that's one of the reasons why I had to chop it up, so I could fit this in the neck of the bike. Alright, without, you know, chopping this up, you were covering up the fork lock, and the fork lock wasn't allowing the bracket to sit flush. So then I had to cut it up. Alright, I chopped it down, and like if you see my my videos on how to paint and stuff like that, I use landmarks. Not landmarks, but I use points on the tool that kind of gives me an indication of where it is and where it's supposed to be. So the original bracket, of course, they have these little turn downs that goes into the bracket, and that's what I ended up doing. So I ended up chopping up as at the point where it starts to come down, and then of course I lined it up with this bracket at the bottom. So if you guys have a 2022, 2023, 2024, you have something on your neck that bolts up to this. So that's what I ended up cutting it down, making it straight, of course, cleaning it up as much as I can with a grinder. Like I said, I don't have any fabricating tools. I don't have a drill press. I don't have a sander or anything like that, a belt sander or nothing like that. All right, this is all grinder and a drill bit, so I can make these holes. So I bought these what is this called, a flat bar steel. I believe it's a 1/4 inch. Well, the label says it's 1/8 of an inch, but it's the same thickness as the bracket. You guys can pretty much see from this point and this point, same thickness. It's 1/4 inch, but Home Depot, they have this labeled as 1/8 of an inch. So I welded this, cleaned up, of course, the inside, all the paint, cleaned it up, made it bare metal so I could have a good weld. And I stick welded all of this at 110 amps because I have a 120 volt outlet. So I have a 120 volt outlet, and I had to set it to 110 amps because 60 all the way up to 100, it just wasn't welding. So at 110, 115, I started seeing some decent results, and I started seeing a little bit of penetration on this side. So that's how I knew I was in the right spot. So if you guys also remember on the unboxing, you have these little L strength brackets on the bracket themselves. I went ahead and I cut all that stuff out. So you have a piece of metal that sticks out this way, like I said, like an L that sticks out, and that's what gives the bracket a little bit more strength. But because of course the Sportster, because of my forks. I have inverted forks and stuff like that. I was losing a lot of the real estate for my front wheel to turn. So that's why I had to cut off all of that. All right, so I removed a lot of the material that was giving this strength. I still believe it's pretty sound, you know, as far as structural, because you have, of course, the weld up here, and then you also have this welded down here. So I don't believe I'm losing that much of strength. So then let's get on to, of course, these braces. Like I said, I used the real estate based off of you know, this what I know is straight. So I measured 1/8 of an inch here, measured 1/8 of an inch at this point, and I welded, of course, these little brackets. Same thing on this side, 1/8 of an inch from this point, 1/8 of an inch from this point. Drew my line, and I knew that was going to be even and straight. These originally were, I'd say, about this long. All right, they stuck out this much. It was about, I don't have a measuring tape, but they were originally 2 inches longer. So I made the holes, of course. You guys can see I drilled up some holes, 3/8 of an inch, so I could fit a bolt through. So I'm using a point on the frame where it still has a hole. I'm not sure if it's like that on all Sportsters. I believe for the most part 2005, 2006 for the most part have that little hole in the frame, so you don't have to drill a hole for this one, but you do have to drill a hole for the secondary point that I have down here. So anyways, measured it up, saw how the frame sat on the bracket and stuff like that. I ended up chopping about 2 3/4 of an inch off, because I just didn't like how the fairing sat. I believe it sat a little bit too far away from the bike, so there was a big gap between the fairing and the fuel tank. So went ahead and cut my hole again. I mean, cut off about 2 3/4 inch. Made my holes again, put it back on the bike. And then I started seeing what angle did I want the fairing on the bike. Like I said, I'm not sure if this video is going to help out, guys, because I didn't record any of the fabrication, because I just really don't know what I was doing. All right, so I cut off 2.5 inches. So the reason, of course, was I wasn't able to fit the bracket on the bike because of the original bracket, the arm. So that's why I had to cut this off, and then I had to relocate the bracket because, of course, the fork lock and then the fuel tank, the width of this on the bracket is the same width of the fuel tank bolt. So the only thing I guess I could have done if I wanted to bolt this onto my fuel tank, I would have to put spacers on the outside, but at the same time the issue was the fork lock right here. So I would have to bend the metal around the fork lock or underneath the fork lock, and then of course bend it outwards so it would sit on the outside of the fuel tank, because the thickness, the width of this point and this point is the same as the as the fuel tank on the Sportster. So like I said, you either have to bend these out 1/8 of an inch, or, you know, put it somewhere else. And like I mentioned, the fork lock was in the way, and I don't have the tools to bend and to fabricate this stuff. So this was the easiest way with my, you know, limited space and my limited use of tools and stuff like that. So I'm mounting this on the frame, like I said. I figured another way to kind of prevent this from moving and shaking and stuff like that is add a secondary point. This is where I had to drill the hole, and the reason why you can see that these two don't line up is because I have my ignition switch that's in the way, and I also have my my throttle cables. They were also in the way. So that's why these are kind of, they're not lined up, but a 1/4 inch bolt fits through here, and they lock into place. The 3/8 bolt fits in through here, and that bolts in, and you know, it's pretty sturdy. It's on point, like I said. I think the spacing between the fairing and the and the bike looks pretty good. All right, at 2 3/4. I could have chopped 3 inches, but the issue is, of course, my inverted forks, they're really thick, and once I have it at full tilt, the front, of course, the forks do rub up against the inner fairing. So that's just one of the things that you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to fabricate it, cut it, chop it, see where it sits, see if you're happy with it, and then, you know, measure the inner fairing against your fuel tank, and just look, you know, just keep on seeing, you know, where is the space? Do you have sufficient space? Does it clear, you know, the parts, stuff like that? And that's where I came up with this little ugly design. I'm gonna keep on practicing. You know, I'm gonna keep on practicing my welds, see if I can improve, and maybe I could probably update this bracket somewhere, you know, down the line or something like that. But back over to the bottom, of course, of the bracket right here, you guys can see that I welded another piece to this bracket, and that's just to get the bracket closer to where it's mounted. Okay, so I'm also using spacers on the inside of this. I'm using 1/2-inch spacers so I can have a nice solid bond with the fairing, with the bracket and the frame, because of course I don't have the tools to bend this and give me a nice you know, bend to the bracket. So it you know, instead of it being kind of like this, like it is on the other, like most brackets, this is just pretty much straight, and then I'm layering it towards the frame over here. So you can see this is, of course, getting closer to the frame, and then I have yet another little point right here where I welded an additional part, and this is, most of this is scrap metal. I welded it so I could get closer and closer to the frame of the bike, and that's pretty much it. Everything else is pretty much left the same. It's just I modified this, and then I'll show you guys where these holes mount up, and then I'll do a install video on the fairing, the bracket, and the bike without explaining what this mess is. So let's go and look at the bike real quick. All right, so here we are with the bike. Of course, like I mentioned, the fork lock is right here on the bike. On the other side, of course, the bracket does not clear that. Of course, that's why we gotta chop it up and bring the arms down here onto the fuel tank. And then remember, once again, the spacing between the bracket is exactly the same as the fuel tank. So my brackets, because I tried putting it over here, my bracket was on exactly on this point right here, so it lines up perfectly to where the bracket. So that's the reason why I ended up mounting it here in this hole. So I don't know if all the Sportsters have this. I've seen people chop this off of their Sportsters, this little neck area. I've seen a few other YouTubers, when they're building choppers, they cut this stuff out. So I knew that this spot, if I had to drill into it, wasn't you know, it wasn't compromising the framer or anything like that. So I ended up using this hole. You guys can see where it's kind of gouged out a little bit. So I'm using this hole. This is 3/8 fits perfectly in right here. And then I went ahead and I drilled the hole down here. You guys can see it. Here, let me see if I can get the camera in there. So that's the 1/4-inch hole that I ended up drilling to kind of fit that bottom bracket. And just off of this and off of this, the bracket's pretty solid. All right, it's pretty sturdy. You guys can also see that we have a secondary hole here, but I just mainly, I guess the reason why I didn't use this is because how thick that metal is that I have. It's I believe 1.5 inches, and where the hole where I was looking at probably drilling, it just I didn't believe that there was enough material on the metal, you know, not to compromise the strength of the metal, because of course where the hole is, I want the hole in the middle, so you have all that surface area around the hole. So that's why I drilled this hole. Pretty easy, of course, a punch and then a drill bit, of course, 1/4 inch, and then you work yourself up to the size. So this one fits all the way through, and of course this one fits all the way through with the 3.5 inch bolts. All of this, of course, you could also get at Home Depot. So this is 3.5 bolt 3-inch half bolt. So this is the 3/4. You can see how that fits. That fits all the way through, and then this is the 1/4 inch, and then that fits right there. And because of, you know, how thick this one is, it still lines up. Because it's at an angle. It's like, it's a little bit like this, and it still clears, and it goes all the way through with the brackets. So like I said, these are 3.5 inch, plenty of clearance. And then on this one, like I said, I do use a 1/2 inch spacer on the inside, so I could have that contact, that full contact between the frame, the spacer, and the bracket and the bolt. The reason being, like I said, is because the spacing that goes right here, it's a little wide, so it's a 1/2 inch on both sides. So 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch on the other side, and we have a good solid contact. And then of course I had washers and lock washers and stuff like that. So I mean, it turned out pretty good. So there it is. And I've been getting a lot of questions on how do you mount the bracket. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully that explains it. Sorry I didn't do a full install or anything like that, but I just had to drill one hole, and it mounts right here and it mounts down here, and that's pretty much it. So life's a risk. Get out there and ride. Later.